Samuel said to Saul, I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over his people Israel. So listen now to the message from the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites. We just read about them. Remember, we mentioned them a moment ago. We read back in Exodus where they came from. Where they're still, they probably, I believe that they, after Exodus 17, after Israel left Egypt, and they fought the Amalekites on their way out, at some point after that, whether immediately or sometime later, I'm not sure, the Amalekites, or at least a portion of them, went down to Egypt and conquered the kingdom, conquered Egypt, and became a dynasty of Egypt called the Hyksos, known as the Shepherd Kings. I believe that's what the Amalekites have largely been. And I believe that time period when they were ruling over Egypt or fighting some of maybe the native dynasties, that was during a time when Egypt was out of the picture, not in its full power. And I believe that overlapped with the time period that Israel's wandering in the desert and the Judges. The Amalekites are starting to come back to Israel now, though. We haven't really read about them since then, but now they're starting to come back. I believe the reason why is because they're getting kicked out of Egypt. I think around this time, Egypt is getting its act together, forcing the Amalekites out, and so the Amalekites are kind of being driven back to this territory away from Egypt. That's my interpretation. That's what I think is happening in history at this time. So that's why we're starting to talk about the Amalekites again, which we haven't mentioned them in a long time, even though we've had this memory in our heads of what they did to us and what we're going to do to them for hundreds of years now. This is what the Lord Almighty says. So Samuel was talking to Saul. I will punish, as the Lord, he's speaking on behalf of the Lord, I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Now go. Attack. Now, of course, that generation of Amalekites is long gone. I mean, that happened 450 plus years early. That was in 1446 BC or after the Exodus. This is now sometime in the 1000s BC, maybe 1050 or 1030 BC. So that was over 400 years ago. But we still remember. That was longer, significantly longer than the entire history of our country. Okay? These people had long memories back then. They did not forget easily. We like to say how stupid the people were back then, how they always were forgetting things, but that's not at all the case. This entire time frame is significantly longer than the entire history of our country. And these people are still hanging on to those memories. They haven't forgotten. Now go. Attack the Amalekites and totally destroy, that's the ban, put them all under the ban, everything that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. That was back what Joshua did when he fought the Canaanites when they came into the land. This is holy war. This is a total, I talked before about the idea of consecration or destruction. You had these things that were supposed to be consecrated to God, devoted to Him, dedicated to Him, put to special use for Him, and then things that were supposed to be destroyed, completely removed, eliminated entirely. That's what it means to be totally destroyed or put under the ban. That's what Joshua did with Jericho. That's what they were supposed to do with the other cities at that time. That's what Saul is supposed to do here at the Amalekites. So Saul summoned the men and mustered them at Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers, and 10,000 men from Judah. So again, we're seeing a difference between the rest of the country and Judah. Saul went to the city of Amalek, and I don't know what city that is. We'll see if they mention it, but who knows. And set an ambush in the ravine. Then he said to the Kenites, go away, leave the Amalekites, so that I do not destroy you along with them. For you showed kindness to the Israelites when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites moved away from the Amalekites. This is actually connected to Moses' father-in-law, Jethro. Remember him? Actually, hang on. Let's. When they leave, okay, so they arrive at Mount Sinai. They leave Egypt. Moses meets his father-in-law Jethro, who comes out to greet him and gives him some advice. Then they go to Mount Sinai, and they stay there for a year. And apparently, let's see here, when they are ready to leave, Judges. This is actually all the way into the book of Judges here. Judges chapter 1, verse 16, it says, the descendants of Moses' father-in-law, the Kenite, went up from the city of palms with the men of Judah to live among the people of the desert of Judah and the Negev. Now remember what I was going to say a moment ago. So they leave Egypt, they stop at Moses' father-in-law's place, they go on to Sinai. Then when they leave Sinai, they ask Moses' father-in-law to come with them. Numbers 10. Moses said to his father-in-law, we are setting out for the place about which the Lord said, I will give it to you. Come with us, and we will treat you well, for the Lord has promised good things for Israel. And he does eventually manage to convince them to go with them, as we read about in Judges 1:16. Then later in Judges, in the days of Deborah and Barak, we read about this Kenite family, Heber the Kenite, whose wife, Jael, is the one who ends up killing Sisera by staking his head in the ground with a tent peg. So the Kenites were allied with Israel. And they're apparently in this region where Saul's about to make war with the Amalekites. And so he wants them to get away from there so they don't get caught up in the battle. So the Kenites moved away from the Amalekites. Then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Havilah to Shur to the east of Egypt. This is probably where the Amalekites were centered as they were gradually being driven out of Egypt back to this area again. He took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive, and all his people he totally destroyed with the sword. And he's not supposed to take them alive. Even if he's the king, he's not supposed to take him alive. But Saul and the army spared Agag and the best of the sheep and cattle, the fat calves and lambs, everything that was good. That's bad. Not supposed to make distinctions between what you want to keep and what you don't. All of it is supposed to go up to the Lord. These they were unwilling to destroy completely. But everything that was despised and weak, they totally destroyed. Okay. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. I am grieved that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Samuel was troubled, and he cried out to the Lord all that night. Early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul. But he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor, and has turned and gone on down to Gilgal. So he made himself great. Saul is acting like a king now, isn't he? He's acting like a king in the mold of all the nations around Israel. When Samuel reached him, Saul said, The Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions. But Samuel said, What then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear? Saul answered, The soldiers brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God, not the Lord my God, but the Lord your God. But we totally destroyed the rest. Stop, Samuel said. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. Tell me, Saul replied. So Saul's pretty pleased with himself. He thinks he's done the right thing here. Samuel said, Although you were once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel. And he sent you on a mission, saying, Go and completely destroy those wicked people, the Amalekites. Make war on them until you have wiped them out. Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the eyes of the Lord? But I did obey the Lord, Saul said. I went on the mission the Lord assigned me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites, and I brought back Agag, their king. The soldiers took sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of what was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord your God at Gilgal. But Samuel replied. So Saul thinks he's done it right. Or at least he's trying to explain it that way. But Samuel replied, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the voice of the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. After all, if we all obey the Lord, we wouldn't need to offer sacrifices. Sacrifices are offered by a penitent people who are disobeying the Lord. It's their way of showing to God, God has made this system for these people to connect with them and reconcile with them after they have turned away from the Lord. Jesus Christ's own sacrifice is necessary because we have turned away from the Lord. And so some sort of payment, restitution is needed in order to allow us to go back to the Lord again. If we follow the Lord correctly and properly as he wants us to, there would be no need for sacrifice. So following the Lord is greater than offering sacrifices. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. Then Saul said to Samuel, now this time it seems to get in. I don't know why. The one in chapter 13 is weird. It almost is like a preview of what's going to come along later. He talks about, Samuel mentions that the Lord is going to take the kingdom away from Saul. But it doesn't seem as though Saul takes that seriously at that time. And maybe I don't know, maybe he thinks that Samuel is just saying this on his own. Maybe he thinks that he can win Samuel and the Lord's favor back again eventually. I don't know, but now it seems to get him. This time it seems to sink in a way that it didn't 2 chapters ago. I'm not sure why. Then Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned. I have violated the Lord's command and your instructions. I was afraid of the people, and so I gave in to them. Now I beg you, forgive. So he is acknowledging that he sinned. He's also kind of deflecting the blame and saying that they really caused me to. Now I beg you, forgive my sin and come back with me, so that I may worship the Lord. But Samuel said to him, I will not go back with you. You have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you as king over Israel. Saul wants Samuel with him for credibility in the eyes of the people. As Samuel turned to leave, Saul caught hold of the hem of his robe. So Saul may have been bowing before Samuel, or at the very least he's reaching out some way to grab him, to turn him back, and it tore. Now Samuel's robe is pretty distinctive. Remember, even back when he was a little kid, his mother would come to the temple or tabernacle every year and bring him a new robe. Now his mother is long dead by this point, and I'm sure this robe he's wearing is not one of the ones that she made years earlier. Maybe I don't know. I doubt it very much. But somehow or another, Samuel was always distinguished by his robe, and now it is torn. Even in death, he's going to be identified by his robe. But now his robe is torn. I can imagine Samuel is pretty upset about that. He's going to use it as an object lesson here for Saul. Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and has given it to one of your neighbors, to one better than you. He who is the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind, but he is not a man that he should change his mind. Saul replied, I have sinned, but please honor me before the elders of my people and before Israel. Come back with me so that I may worship the Lord your God. So Samuel went back with Saul, and Saul worshipped the Lord. Then Samuel said, bring me Agag, king of the Amalekites. Agag came to him confidently, thinking, surely the bitterness of death is past. Or maybe it says he came to him trembling, yet thinking, surely maybe he thinks he's going to get away with it. Maybe he thinks they're going to spare him now after all this. But Samuel said, as your sword has made women childless, so your mother will be childless among women. And Samuel put Agag to death before the Lord at Gilgal. Then Samuel left for Ramah, But Saul went up to his home in Gibeah of Saul. Until the day Samuel died, he did not go to see Saul again, though Samuel mourned for him. And the Lord was grieved that he had made Saul king over Israel. Samuel and Saul will see each other again at some point. And in fact, they'll see each other again even after Samuel dies. But that doesn't mean that what that text means there. What that text means there is that Samuel never officially made a visit to Saul again. The encounter they have later on is incidental and unplanned. So Saul has been rejected twice now, actually. For some reason, the first rejection didn't take. I don't really know why. I can't really explain why that happened, why it's written that way. Maybe Saul just didn't. When Samuel first told Saul that he was rejected, it was in the heat of battle. Samuel then left, and Saul went on to continue fighting. Maybe Saul just didn't have time to process that at that point, because he was still in the thick of fighting. Maybe he thought Samuel was only speaking on his own behalf. He wasn't speaking on behalf of God. Maybe he thought Samuel was just speaking as a man, speaking, and that his first rejection didn't really matter, and that he, Saul, could win Samuel in the Lord's favor back again. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe he was even partially right about that. I don't know. This one seems to count, though. This is the one that sticks. This is the one that is going to be permanent. And so right after, so now we have a king who has been rejected, a prophet who is in mourning over the wayward ways of the king, and a king who has been told that he's going to lose the kingdom, and some other Israelite, a neighbor, a fellow Israelite, is going to get it. So those are the conditions that are in place now as we enter 1 Samuel 16, and we begin the story of David. And we'll pick that up next time.